All righty, good morning. Oh, wow. It's Chassel. Are you in Michigan? Am I Michigan? Really? That is so cool. All right. Need to copy this link. Wow. Well, welcome. You're not going to be 90 degrees today, though, I hope. The presentation is in the chat. We will give people a little more time. That was such a great presentation this morning. I'm sure people are taking a few minutes to regroup before they're coming in. I have my coffee. I'm set. Okay, we'll just wait another minute and then we'll get started. It looks like the chat remains, and we don't. I don't have to keep reposting the link every time somebody new comes. So there is to the presentation in the chat, and yeah, I thought the keynote speaker was going to go a little long, and that's fine. We can take just a couple extra minutes. Yeah. Yeah, let's wait just a couple extra minutes. Christina, I did turn on captioning and it disappeared. I don't know where it went.
Was use the power of computer science. I currently teach computer
science. There it is.
Captioning only works when you're in presentation mode. So when you went out of presentation mode, captioning turned off.
Okay.
So if you go into present and then go down to the little bottom, the three little dots in the left-hand corner, you should be able to turn it back on.
There it is. All right, thanks.
You're welcome. I'll leave the screen. I'm just here to help.
Okay. Yeah, all my notes are in the bottom of that. So
do whatever works best for you.
Yep, we'll get it. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, all right. Just gonna put my links over here so I have access to them. Wait just a second. All right.
Hi, Shannon. Everything all good?
Yeah, I got my captioning back. Apparently I have to be in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're going to turn those on? Or they're not on?
Well, it's on right now. Do you see it?
I don't see it. That's weird.
I mean, it's on my screen.
Well, that's obnoxious. That's all right. You keep trying, and if it doesn't get it, we will add it later.
I mean, it's there, so.
That is strange. Okay. Well, thank you for trying. I'll butt out and let you do your thing.
Okay. All right then. Thank you. Okay, so good morning and thank you for being here. This session is computational thinking and computer science in all content areas. And I think we're going to look at kind of a broad overview of how to do some of the integration strategies. And I think that's K-12. And so some of these strategies should help you whether you're teaching in elementary, middle school, or high school. So good morning. Thank you for being here. I hear that the speaker just got over just a few minutes ago. That was a very wonderful speaker. I really enjoyed his videos and just his energy, and wishing we all could have a lot of energy like that too. So. So I want to start off with just reviewing our vision and our mission at OSPI, looking for preparing all students for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement, and working really hard to ensure equity. That's some of our work this summer and going forward into the fall. Collaboration and service, achieving excellence through continuous improvement, and focusing on the whole child. And then our equity statement, each student, family, and community possesses strengths and cultural knowledge that benefits their peers, educators, and schools. And I know we will be hearing more about it. CTCS, Computational Thinking, Computer Science. Thank you, Andrea. I'm not going to read that to you. I'll let you go ahead and you can look at that. So I also want to do a tribal land acknowledgement. OSPI has an acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge the indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit the area today. The Stay-Chos Band of indigenous people of the Squaxin Island tribe. In the notes on the PowerPoint, you will see that there is some more information on the tribe, and if you're looking for additional history or information. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of time on the definitions, but I'm just going to do quick information on computer science, quick information on computational thinking, and then talk about strategies for integration and what kind of resources do we have out there that will support and help teachers. We will talk about equity because that's so important, especially when we start thinking that there's going to be, in the next 7 years, over 230,000 jobs that have a tech emphasis in them in Washington State. So more and more tech jobs or even tech skills, whether they're any kind of computer science or computational thinking, these are going to become more and more important as we move into a society that's an information based. I'll provide you a little information. We have a webinar coming up with some teaching strategies, and also we have a summit that we're planning, so I'll let you know about that and then answer your questions and get some feedback. So thank you for being here. So the computer science standards are really just meant to establish a baseline literacy in computer science for all students and provide guidance for designing curriculum assessment and teacher preparation programs. You will notice that in the notes, I did put in the standards document for the computer science standards, so you can take a look at that. K2 computer science standards are pretty much one-to-one with the ISTE standards, really focusing on computational thinking, not really computer-based, so it's not like we need to have a device in this at all. 3.5 does the integration piece, and so does middle school. High school standards are much more, I want to say, oriented to a class. So depending on what that class is, usually in the CTE pathway for the computer science. There are some core concepts in here: computing systems, network and the internet, data and analysis, algorithms and programming. And you're going to see algorithms and programming has a lot of overlap with computational thinking. And just really, how do you look at, that information, doing a data and analysis, and to help you create solutions or solve problems. And then also impacted computing, which sometimes is left out, but using computers, there's lots of impact on society with that. And then we have some core practices, which are more around the experiences that students would have in a classroom. I don't know if I put the link to the, nope, okay. So pretty much this is how we're going to teach it. What we're going to teach is in the concepts. So Washington State has its very own definition of computer science. What we wanted to do was make it broad enough to encompass even courses that were not in existence, because we are changing so fast and technology is not waiting for education to catch up to it. We have all sorts of different categories that we kind of grouped all together, because what we want them to know is that computer science is not just coding. And we'll look at that really in the context of computational thinking. Work probably does need to be done on our standards, because for high school it's mainly coding, and as we all know, computer science is cybersecurity, it's artificial intelligence. I mean, there's all sorts of other ways that students learn computer science. And then that definition is located in our guidance document, and I'm going to do a couple webinars on those. But really, it gives you the definition of what computer science is, and then it talks about 712 courses through CTE that are counted in our CEDARs as computer science. But there's a whole section in here, and we'll talk about the webinars we're going to have around that. The majority of this report is about what it looks like in a classroom. So all the computer science standards are called out individually, and we had a fabulous group of teachers get together and work on what would this standard look like in the class, and how am I going to do it. The link is in the notes on this one as well. Computational thinking is really about problem solving. One of the things that I always did in my programming classes was start off with computational thinking and how are we going to look at solving these problems and giving them a strategy and kind of a process that would help them think more about intentionally about the work that they were doing. And I think that's the whole thing behind computational thinking. It was introduced by Jeanette Wing, who's a researcher at Microsoft and at Stanford, looking at how do we really set up problems so they can be solved on a computer. A lot of this is around decomposition and algorithms, but the pattern matching, and I think one of the things that you don't realize is that you're probably doing more of these in your classroom right now. It's just a matter of understanding what they are, and then also how we can go ahead and build on those. Abstraction is, again, a little scary word. People look at abstraction and they're not sure. We'll look a little bit more about abstraction, but pretty much what it is it's allowing solutions to be used in more than one situation. So having kind of a base or an understanding of a problem at that level. Yes, there are links in the notes. I am presenting and I lost the captions again. Okay, well, we will work with this. So I will let you read those. I think one of the biggest things about computer science and computational thinking, and so both of these can fit in here, is that really it's not about using computers, and you really don't have to have a computer to be able to use computational thinking strategies. And like I said, they're the foundation of computer science skills as well. And what we're doing here is looking at how we can solve problems with the solutions that can be either automated or also applied to other situations. So it's not about solving math problems or being very specific in that way, but being able to look at problems in a systematic way and create that solution. So this is a quote that I recently found, which is which I think is just kind of enlightening, because I think we say that and we know that, but I did have a superintendent once tell me that his kids had enough computer science in their school because they knew how to Google. So the thing is we don't just really just get these skills by using technology or using something, just like, you don't have engineering skills just because you drive an automobile, and you don't have engineering skills because you've been on an airplane. So really looking at those in a more applicable way, and understanding that there is some purpose and focus that needs to be done on some of these skills. It is not through osmosis, for sure. And what we're trying to do is move kids beyond what is just technology literacy and just using computers. Computational thinking and computer science, like I said, have a huge overlap in that. And then trying to really understand and be purposeful about the fact that it's not coding. I know there's lots of programs and lots of resources out there that happen to be coding based, and sometimes that's the easiest for people to start with or to understand, which is fine. But what we're doing is we're looking at that, going above that user to that creator, innovator part of the curriculum, and helping our students creatively solve those problems. You already do some of this in the classroom, but there is some intentionality in some of the steps that can help. If students can do computational thinking, it does make coding, and it does make some of the computer science courses a little bit easier, because that process is embedded through all that we do. So what is integration? So when looking at computational thinking, computer science, what is integration? So when we're looking at this, we're not talking about creating a computer science assessment or lesson plan and putting it in the middle of social studies. That does not work. What we're talking about is using computer science as a tool, using computational thinking as a tool, something that helps you expand some of your resources. Some of it also will help with student engagement. Some of it helps with a deeper understanding of some concepts. But what we're looking at is not replacing what you're teaching, because what you're teaching and your content areas is so important. We don't want to water down what you're doing, but what we want to do is enhance and engage students. This is not an isolated set of skills. It's not an add-on. We're not stopping what we're doing. We're just being more directed and more purposeful in that. Sometimes when you're integrating some of these resources, it does help students build new knowledge, and make connections in different ways. Examples could be, creating a storyboard or a story, because when you pull those apart, and we'll go through the computational thinking pillars in just a moment, but thinking through that we can have students create an animation of a process. I know there's a lot online with some of the science processes. And then even just creating a graph or a chart, using that graph or that chart to evaluate and assess and make some judgments from there. Journals, just reflecting on what they're learning. Students could create web pages, we could do video presentations. All of those things are looking at the computational thinking and computer science. So the National Science Teachers Association came out with an article last year, which is really good. So I put the link on the in both the notes and on the slide. The article is a really good article talking about how they're looking at that framework for integrating computational thinking, and science does have that three-dimensional model, and I think that's a really another good way to think about integrating this. Really taking what exists in your curriculum and what you're doing, and really understanding where it's already present is really kind of the first step. And we also have, this kind of models the SAMR model, which talks about the very first thing people do when they're integrating is they look at substitution and augmentation. And so looking at some of those things in that light. But really, let's start with what we have. Let's acknowledge what exists in there as a starting point. And then once that becomes more evident and you're more comfortable with that, then we can look at enhancing it. And so we can potentially integrate more technology. Like I said, too, you can have students create a story. They could do an animation in Scratch. They could do an animation in PowerPoint. But they could break those things down into those pieces, and that would be a way of enhancing, which again, through the SAMR model is a little bit more like augmentation and some modifications than really align with extending. And so after you're more comfortable and you understand, how it exists and enhance, I think extending it to maybe more purposeful integration. I know their example was using programming. I think there are some other examples beside that, but just even doing Scratch and having kids do like the life cycle of a butterfly pictures and animating that, showing some sort of a deeper understanding maybe of the process by actually having to code it. Sometimes can also be very engaging for students. Again, students have to have some choice in that. Some will find that very frustrating, but it's another way of having them get comfortable with the technology that we're going to be using. They're going to use in the future through their whole adult lives. So I just want to take a look at these kind of in perspective to what you guys already are doing. Decomposition is usually the first one that we look at when we're doing computational thinking. And anything that you have students break down into smaller, more manageable parts is the very starting on that. So there are some examples on this slide of what it could look like, but really what we're doing is having students break things into pieces, into parts, and it helps you organize your information once you know all of those different things that apply to the problem that you're trying to solve. And so there's some examples there. The second one is pattern recognition, and there's a good way to look at those processes, but finding similarities between items is a way of gaining some extra information. So can they, classify shapes? Can they organize things in days of the week? Even math patterns. When we look at Fibonacci and we can look at the golden rectangle, we can look at all of these other things. But we're looking at patterns, which helps us kind of categorize and organize the information that we've broken apart. It also can lead to solutions as well as we're working through that. So there are some examples there about pattern recognition. So abstraction really helps you look at solving a problem. And I know they created this as the third pillar, but it also fits very much after you do the algorithms and the problem solving. But it's a way of ignoring details to come up with a solution that works for a more general problem. So for example, if you wanted kids to categorize, cars. There are different types of cars. There's SUVs, there's minivans, there's all those different pieces in there, which might be extraneous information because we want the solution to be applied to all cars. It allows you to kind of move that extra information off to the side. I always remember the math problems when I was growing up because they seemed like they always threw you off by putting one little element in there that said, and they're taking their luggage with them on the train, which you never needed. But it's also a way of focusing back on the problem. And then an algorithm, and you guys do algorithms, and I love algorithms because you do them everywhere. I saw on a kindergarten wall, I saw instructions on how to line up at the door, making sure you're so far away from the person in front of you and back of you, lining up in a straight line, not curved. I mean, they had all sorts of instructions on how to do that. And that's a really good way to begin too with computational thinking, is really thinking about, is there processes that students can create those algorithms from, and then use those algorithms over and over and over again. But it's also the most easy. None of these things have to have a computer with them. When we get into more of the computer science, there is some more computers. Okay, Jennifer, I will get the notes to you, definitely. And we'll take a look at that. So any way that we can think of integrating those ways of thinking, for example, here's some examples in literature, economics, culinary arts. I mean, just writing a recipe is a skill, and a lot can follow those recipes. But again, what are the ways that we can apply computational thinking? And of course, it's really inherent in math, I think, especially around modeling, even chemistry, as you think of those applications in your content areas. And there are also lots of websites out there. This is one that's been around for quite a while, Computer Science Unplugged. And so there's lots of activities in there that you can teach without a computer. Kind of games and puzzles and things like that. Sometimes when we look at the Computer Science Unplugged, it is more of a activity that's not integratable, but there are some things that are integratable with those as well. So Computer Science Unplugged in their computational thinking. Also, one of the things too that really is good for elementary is Code.org has a CS Fundamentals courses, and they're online on Code.org. You just sign up for their studio for teachers, and you can go into those fundamental classes. There's 5 of them, and I just pulled out 3 different activities that they did. One, planting seeds. When you're thinking about science and that, arranging tanagrams in specific patterns. I think about that in math and maybe geometry, some of those things. Building an airplane. So there's are different things in there that really look at addressing those computational thinking skills. Some of them are decomposition. There's several that are in there that are already made. There is also a CS Discoveries for middle school, and then they do have their computer science principles. And so there's lots of activities in there that you can look at for computer science. I know code.org right now is working on a actual programming curriculum. It's not out yet, but it should be here soon. Other ways to really get started with this is looking at a hour of code. Some of this information will be on the Computer Science Education Week webpage. That links there. They do not have information up for this year. The information from last year is still there. It starts in December, and so usually around the end of September, October, they start putting more information on there. But Computer Science Education Week is December 6th through 12th of this year. Usually what they do is they help support with Hour of Code. But Hour of Code activities can be done anytime through the year. You don't have to wait until December to do them, and you can think about it too. You could make it a part of a STEM night, family night, some sort of a community event. Kids can bring their parents in and show them what they've done. Code has its own web page, and there are some ready-made lesson plans around it. And then if you think about maybe a community event or an after-school activity, there is a lot of information on that website on how to promote this in your community. I also did put just a couple things of resources that are in here for you. Code.org has a list of resources that you can look at. Really pay attention to some of those because they're not all free, but they do a really good job of listing how much they cost. Free curriculum, again, CS First has some free curriculum. Bootstrap has some that's really specific around algebra, as well as some science. Colorado Department of Education did a fabulous job putting together a page of resources, and it will tell you if they're free and how they can work in the classroom. And then Massachusetts did this guide. The prices in there have changed, but they really talk a lot about some of the products that are out there, like code.org and CS First, and really let you know what you need to start using those. I really like the National Science Teachers Association website. They do have some interdisciplinary ideas in there, so I went ahead and provided you with that. When really looking at computational thinking, we based a lot of it on the book from Jane Cross. She talks about computational thinking and coding for every student, really stresses the 4 pillars, what that looks like in the classroom and in every content area. She also has some lessons in here that are ready. You can also download from her companion website. You could do a discussion guide with videos, activities, some other resources that are there as well. I know that the computer science ESD leads have done these book studies in the past, and so there is an opportunity for that. Andrew Hickman has done a great job, as well as all the other ESDs in supporting computer science. Another really good resource, really looking at equity and putting equity as the core here, is how do you make sure there's equitable access to computer science and to some of the other STEM fields it applies to as well. And so there's a link for that. We also are in a state where we have access CS for all. So there is through the University of Washington and Dr. Laudner, there is a whole bunch of information on how to ensure accessibility for those with disabilities. There are a couple little things here on the slide, but I do believe I put his link in the notes. Let me just go down and make sure. Yes. Not seeing his link. I will make sure I get his link there. But it's a really good website and has lots of information on there. I know CSAll does an accessibility type of pledge. It's really interesting to go and see who's doing the pledges and what they're doing in order to ensure that students with disabilities are also served in this population. Also, really looking at culturally responsive computing education. I know that we're coming out with some CCDEI, culturally competent and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're looking at more of those standards and how to integrate and make sure that those are addressed in everything that we do. Really acknowledging students for their experiences and also their past knowledge. Okay, so we are going to have a computer science summit. Here's a save the date. There is a link to the website there. It's on the CS for All Washington website. Right now we're doing save the date. We're hoping to have registration information out around the middle of August. We're looking at a Friday night. We have a couple keynote speakers and looking Friday night and then all day on Saturday. Because of COVID, we've decided to do this virtually. We are not at a place yet where we feel comfortable doing an in-person, although that's coming up soon, and hopefully we can follow this up with an in-person event. The different strands you'll see are really focused around why computer science. So why do we want computer science in the classroom? Why do we want it in the school? I think one of the things that high schools really have to think about is there's a Senate bill 5088, which says that by next year, all high schools will offer a computer science course. So what does that look like? Why are we doing computer science? What are the reasons for offering computer science? It's definitely part of school reform. It's definitely part of equity and social justice. So we're going to be looking at those things during the summit. We've had a great response on a survey we sent out that people are really interested in looking at these types of strands. And so hopefully we can provide a administrator as well as a teacher track within this. Again, that information's on the CS for All Washington website. And then I did mention the guide on teaching. There's 2 webinars. The first 2 webinars in August go over course codes, and it has a lot to do with how districts are going to make sure they meet the law and those regulations around course codes and what courses they can teach and that. And then Wednesday and Thursday of the following week, we will take a look at the guidance. What do those computer science standards look like in the classroom? How are they integrated? If, you know, even if we had an administrator that came to these sessions, they could see what they're looking for. It's often hard for people to walk into a classroom and assess whether you're teaching computer science or you're teaching technology, especially when it's integrated. So what are those things, and what do they look like in the classroom? Again, you know, I am open to answering questions here, but if you want to, you can also email me. If you have questions about CTE, Lance is really your man. He's got the CTE thing down, but for computer science and some computational thinking, how those integrate, go ahead and feel free to send me an email. Ask me questions and that. And we have a good 5-10 minutes left for questions. If you guys have questions, put in the chat. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for promoting computer science and being interested. We just don't want to make it another thing.